Nobody wants to be the victim of a lie. Nobody wants to be taken advantage of. Nobody wants to be manipulated into believing something that isn't true. Nobody wants to see their emotional or physical health harmed in any way. And nobody wants to see their world be destroyed. But what if I told you that these statements are not just hypothetical musings? What if I told you that there is another world out there, and one in which we are completely unaware, and it is robbing us of our innate desire to strive to live well and do no harm to others? In fact, just in the last minute, this other world is responsible for destroying the equivalent of 7 football fields worth of land. And in the next hour, 1 million innocent lives will be taken. Now, what if I told you that we are not only victims of this other world, but we are also responsible for its existence? And we are paying the price in the form of our own health, the health of the planet, the lives of others, and our own capacity for compassion. This other world that I speak of is the animal agriculture industry. And today, I am going to share with you the game-changing moments that led to my understanding of how our own capacity for empathy creates a kinder, more compassionate world. And it starts with our choices. Now, despite what you may be thinking, the statements I made earlier about being victims of lies, manipulation, physical and emotional harm, and destruction are in no ways exaggerations or baseless, unsubstantiated claims. What is extreme, however, is the massacre of nearly 9 billion land animals every year in our country alone for the consumption of meat, dairy, and eggs. And the way in which these 9 billion animals are raised, treated, and killed is truly beyond any horror that you could possibly imagine sitting in your seat right now. Now, it's not our fault that we are unaware of what's going on, because the agriculture industry purposefully hides this information from us and instead paints a picture of happy cows and rolling plains in all of their advertisements. We have been fed terms such as pasture-raised, cage-free, organic, natural, humane, to appease us and to make us believe there is no harm in our choices. We have been entirely indoctrinated into a world where eating animals has become so normalized that we don't even think we have a choice but to do it. But in the age of information, we do have the ability to make choices that prevent us from paying with our dollars to support an industry that is based entirely on suffering, cruelty, and destruction. And we have the right and the responsibility to understand the full, unfiltered picture of where our food is coming from and who is paying the price for it. But every enlightenment must begin with a game-changing moment. And for me, the game changer was when my cousin shed light on the cruelty of factory farming. Our intense and thorough conversation led to my own research, starting with a video he sent me called Farm to Fridge. Farm to Fridge was a 12-minute horror film that contained undercover footage of the industry standard for the treatment of animals raised for meat, dairy, and eggs. I sat on the couch in my apartment, completely stunned, with tears streaming down my face. And when that video stopped, I felt like my world had stopped spinning. And a slew of questions went through my head, like, how can this be real? How is this allowed? Why are we not educated about this? And the more I researched and the more I watched, the deeper I realized this needs to stop. Initially, it was very difficult for me to accept the reality and the scientific fact that humans do not need to consume animals in order to be healthy. And the more I delved into this world, the quicker I internalized the reality that we eat animals for 4 reasons only: tradition, convenience, habit, and taste. I used to love eating meat. In fact, one of the favorite stories among my college friends is how my version of snacking was sitting on the floor of my dorm room eating a rotisserie chicken right out of the container. But after watching Farm to Fridge and doing more research on animal agriculture, I could no longer deny the truth just because I didn't want to accept it. And I certainly didn't want to deprive myself of my own desire to live well and to live in a way that causes the least amount of harm to others. I could then look at my dog Gracie and see the connection. That Gracie is no different than any other sentient being. Gracie was simply born into different circumstances. Gracie lives in a world where it is not palatable or socially acceptable to exploit, abuse, or consume dog meat. The reality is that Gracie is no different than any chicken, cow, pig, goat, or lamb. So the light had been shed, and the truth had been exposed, and now it was time to do something about this. Animals are sentient creatures, which means they can and do feel pain, fear, and sadness, along with affection, comfort, and love. There have been over 2,500 studies to prove this. Animals have unique personalities, and they have their own interests. In fact, we share the same desire that they do, to live our lives in peace, to live a life that is free of pain, fear, and suffering. And we both want to have some fun, too. Animals care about their relationships, and they worry about those relationships, like we worry about ours. I was heartbroken to see videos of baby calves in the dairy industry being ripped away from their mothers shortly after birth, because humans consume the cow's milk, so the babies cannot have it. And the male babies are sent to slaughter or sometimes killed instantly right in front of their mothers. And the mother cows cry for hours, days, sometimes weeks over their lost babies. The bond between a mother and her baby is no different in the animal world. Only their cries are different. But mothers and babies are not the only relationships that animals form. Animals form friendships too, just like us. About a year ago, I became involved with an animal sanctuary for baby goats with special needs, called the Goats of Anarchy, created by an amazing woman, Leanne Lauricella. And the first time I visited the Goats of Anarchy, I realized firsthand just how playful and affectionate farm animals are, just like our pets at home. And one goat in particular, his name is Miles, he came over to me as I was kneeling down, and he propped his legs up onto my knees, and he leaned into me, and he twisted his head entirely around my neck. And it took me a second before I realized, this is my first goat hug. And then Miles continued to follow me around all afternoon and lean in for kisses and cuddles, just like Gracie does whenever we're at home. And that first visit to Goats of Anarchy changed me, because I kept thinking about Miles and about the fact that all animals crave affection, but we deny them the chance. And this led to my contemplation about the connection between the way we treat non-human animals and the way we treat human animals. What are the factors that empower humans to treat other people so poorly? What is the mentality behind bullying? How do we dehumanize other people so that it becomes acceptable to treat them in a way that we would not want to be treated ourselves? Throughout history and throughout observations that you and I have made, and perhaps in reflection of our own lives, we become desensitized to the suffering of others under the false belief that we have more rights than others, that we are smarter than others, that we are more attractive than others, that we have more followers than others, that we can contribute more to society than others, that we are more powerful and more deserving. We have become desensitized to the suffering of other nations because it's not happening in front of our eyes on our own turf. And they don't speak our language, so we don't understand them. and they don't look like us. They are other. So what is the common denominator between us and those who are other? It is our capacity to suffer and our desire to live and to be happy. There is no difference between human and animal sentience. How then can we argue against compassion? It no longer matters that chickens are dumb, an argument I have heard before and one that is also untrue. But what does matter is that they can suffer. So we have to ask ourselves, how can we accept the fact that we kill 9 billion animals every year who have the same emotions that we do? Rather than support their suffering and exploitation, we should try to learn something from the animals. We as humans have a lot to learn from them. The ability to spread kindness unconditionally, even when it's hard. The desire to protect our relationships and to remain loyal to those we care about. The ability to persevere despite unfortunate circumstance, and to remain resilient in times of physical and emotional challenge. So what then is the solution? How can we live our lives in a way that does not support animal suffering or exploitation? We can research factory farming and animal agriculture and make informed decisions. We can recognize the contradiction in the phrase humane slaughter. As an English teacher, we call that an oxymoron. But ultimately, what we can do is adopt a plant-based diet and dispel the myth that a plant-based diet means eating salads 3 times a day. A plant-based diet means eating macaroni and cheese, tacos, pizza, pasta, donuts, all of your favorite foods. You can still be a foodie and eat a plant-based diet. You can still be an Italian girl and crave your favorite comfort foods. And I guarantee you can still go to your favorite restaurants and find an option on the menu that is plant-based. And what's more is I bet you will hardly notice a difference in the taste. Because our society is really starting to adapt to the demand of a plant-based diet. Because our planet literally cannot sustain the rate at which humans consume animals. That's why companies that are creating plant-based substitutes for meat are experiencing skyrocketing sales, to the point where Tyson Chicken bought 5% of the plant-based company Beyond Meat. The largest meat producer in America had no choice but to prepare for a world where people are starting to care about where their food is coming from and who is paying the price. For every product you currently enjoy, there is a company out there who is making a plant-based substitute that will meet or exceed your expectations in taste, variety, and quality. And when we base our choices for food on compassion for animals, we also extend compassion to the environment and to ourselves. Animal agriculture is the leading cause of global warming, ocean dead zones, water depletion, deforestation, and species extinction. And furthermore, what about our own health? The #1 leading cause of death in America is heart disease. And our arteries are not getting clogged from eating fruits or vegetables. They're getting clogged from eating animal products. And a plant-based diet is the only diet that has been proven to reverse heart disease. I think it's amazing that whenever we make more compassionate choices, that kindness comes back to us in the form of our health and the well-being of our planet. We can literally change the world every single day that we choose to eat a plant-based diet. In one day, you could save 1,100 gallons of water, 45 pounds of grain, 30 square feet of forested land, 20 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent, and 1 animal's life every day. It is time that we start to take responsibility for our actions and our choices, especially ones that we make 3 times a day and ones over which we do have control. It is time that we get outside of ourselves and start thinking about the future and not what just we want right here and right now. And it's time to stop being brainwashed into thinking that we can only be healthy if we drink a cow's milk at breakfast and eat a chicken breast at dinner. And we need to abandon the "it's not my problem" mentality, because that way of thinking cripples our ability to be empathetic and selfless across all facets of our life. Also, it is our problem. We as humans have been given the ability to use reason and logic. And rather than view that as a right to do what we want, it's time that we look at that as a responsibility to make better choices and to care for those who are under our protection. We can be game changers every day through our choices. We have the ability to shed light and to educate our family and friends so that we can grow together and be part of something bigger than ourselves. When you think about it, we all started as children who really cared about animals. So let's return to those roots of compassion for all those who are other. Gandhi once said that the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. Just because things have always been done a certain way does not make it right. And we have the responsibility to create a more ethical world than the one in which we grew up. Let's not just say we want to change the world. Let's actually do it. Thank you.